20 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Do you know when the debates years ago were about the Affordable Health Care Act, now known as Obamacare? One of the fears that everybody had was that doctors weren't going to be making decisions anymore, that politicians would be making decisions. And there was a lot of debate about that. Still is a lot of debate about that. And now there is a new report that we're going to learn about called Politics in the Exam Room. And maybe this will reveal, now that we've had Obamacare in place for, what, 2 years now?
Yes.
Maybe we'll find out if indeed that has happened, if it hasn't happened, if there's something to be worried about or not worried about. Debra Ness is on the phone with Mike McLively. Debra is the president of the National Partnership for Women and Families, and Mike is a staff attorney for the Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. They're talking about this new report called the Politics in the Exam Room. Good morning, Debra Ness and Mike McLively. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. Where are you both calling from?
I am calling from Washington, D.C.
Okay. Mike?
I'm in San Francisco.
Oh, my goodness. We got a big triangle going here. Thank you for getting up early, Mike. Thank you for being up early. So what did the report reveal?
So, you know, it was a great opening, Larry, because one of the fears around the ACA was that somehow the government would be interfering in the doctor-patient relationship. And the irony here is that a lot of those very same legislators who scared people about the ACA are the same folks who are over and over again now in states trying to pass laws that would insert their politics in the exam room. And we've seen this happen particularly in women's health, and we're also seeing it now spill over and spread in areas like gun safety and environmental safety. So on the women's health area, we've known for a long time that people have tried to make it harder for women to get abortions. And so you have state legislatures passing laws that actually mandate what doctors can say or have to do when they're in the middle of caring for their patients. So that has led to things like having to read forced scripts with inaccurate information, telling people stuff that's not true, like there's a link between abortion and breast cancer. It's also led to things like forcing doctors to provide unnecessary procedures, so things like forced sonograms that the doctor doesn't think is appropriate, the patient doesn't want, but they're being forced to do these things anyway because of the political ideology that resulted in a law that says you must do this even though it flies in the face of good medical practice. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk about some of what's going on in the gun safety area.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're seeing going on here is, look, we know we have a problem with gun violence in the United States, but what sort of doesn't get talked about as much is the huge number of accidental deaths, nearly 1,000 every year, and on top of that, thousands of more injuries that are caused by firearms that are not properly secured. And, you know, what is more preventable than a 5- or 6-year-old child getting their hands on a firearm and accidentally using it? And so the real issue here is education about proper storage of firearms. And it's estimated that there's close to 2 million kids who live in homes where the gun is not properly secured. And what we've seen is that when people have conversations, open and honest conversations with their doctors, they really improve their practices, and we can save lives that way. And actually what happened in Florida in 2011 is that the legislature passed what we call the medical gag law that prevents doctors from talking about, even bringing up the topic of guns in the home unless they determine that in that specific case it's medically necessary to talk about that issue. And so if it turns out that it wasn't, or that the doctor didn't in good faith think that, they're subject to a fine and potentially losing their license. And so the question is, are you creating this huge chilling effect where doctors are now afraid to even bring the subject up because if they happen to offend?
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
They're now subject to all these penalties. And so we think that really is, scaring doctors and preventing them from having these potentially life-saving conversations.
Right.
And, this is not about taking away guns from people. It's not about disrespecting people's Second Amendment rights. It's about respecting the First Amendment and allowing patients to have access to all the best information that's available out there and encouraging those honest conversations.
Last night on the debates, the Hillary Clinton made a statement that was being debated this morning, and I just want to tell you that what the debate is actually supporting what you're saying. She made the statement, and it was that there were 90 people who die each day from gun violence. And the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention wanted to clarify that, and they said there are actually 92 per day for the year of 2013. 63 of them, 63 were suicides. 11,208 were homicides, and the rest were unintentional discharges, or about 505 of them. And then 281 undetermined. So that 505 unintentional discharges, that's a lot per day. And that's the number you're talking about.
Right, and that's just death. So if you think that there's far more injuries talking about these situations, the number of shootings every day is more like 322 when you include injuries as well, which obviously an injury with a gun is a pretty serious thing that requires a lot of medical attention and those sort of costs.
So in that case, if I go to the doctor and I am I'm under anesthesia, whatever it is when you're under, and he decides he wants to cut off my arm, but I haven't signed a paper to say he can, the legal presence, the government presence in that room prevents him from doing that. Which I'm happy with that government presence in the operation. I don't want to wake up and find myself without an arm just because he thought I should lose an arm. And so I'm happy with that. But how does that apply to the guns? I'm not really sure.
So I think the point here is that there are ways in which it is appropriate for the government to regulate the healthcare industry. And you want them to regulate it in a way that ensures that patients are getting the best possible care, that patients are getting evidence-based, scientifically sound care that's in their interest. You want to make sure that doctors are behaving in a way that's very patient and family-centered. That's all good. But here we're talking about situations where people are imposing their ideology and forcing doctors to do things that they think are not medically sound, or to not talk about things that they think they should be able to talk to their patients about, or to be forced to talk to their patients about things that they think are medically inaccurate. So what the difference is these are intrusions that are forcing politics to determine what it is goes into the doctor-patient relationship rather than what's in the patient's best interest.
If the presence is to protect us, and that's the intent, then I think I'm all for it. In the example of a pregnant woman, are we protecting? Is the government presence protecting one person or two people? Do we consider the unborn fetus a person?
Well, that's a question of legal debate, philosophical debate, religious debate. At what point is a person a person? These laws are not intended. I mean, you can debate that. You can have lots of different viewpoints. That's an important debate to have in society, but it is not something that should corrupt what we know as sound medical practice. So, for example, once somebody has made a decision about their care, to force them to have extra visits or extra services, or to force delays in the care, or to force a doctor to read a script that tries to scare the woman with things that aren't true, like, abortions are related to breast cancer. It's that kind of intrusion where it's purely ideological.
Well, that doesn't make sense at all, that part, yeah.
Exactly. It's not based on science and let me give you the example from the environmental world, because this is really a good one. In some states now, they are making it difficult or prohibiting doctors from disclosing to patients the chemicals that they have been exposed to in the fracking process, which means that if you've been exposed to toxic chemicals and you go to your doctor, number one, the doctor can have a lot of trouble finding out what those chemicals were, because the government the laws are protecting the company's trade secrets. And two, even if the doctor gets that information, he may be prohibited from sharing that information with patients.
Well, it sounds like you're doing some good work. Can you, before we run out of time, we got 15 seconds, give us a website so we can look into this further?
nationalpartnership.org. You can download the report, and you can help us get politics out of the exam room.
Okay. Debra, Ness, and Mike McLively, thank you for being on the air with us today. Good piece. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. In the first Democratic presidential debate of this campaign, Hillary Clinton taking aim at opponent Bernie Sanders on the issue of gun control.
He was going to give immunity to the only industry in America. Everybody else has to be accountable, but not the gun manufacturers.
Sanders saying that people are frustrated with establishment politics in the CNN debate on Westwood One News.
I am the only candidate running for president who is not a billionaire, who has raised substantial sums of money, and I do not have a super PAC.
Sanders saying he's the one the country needs. Iran's Guardian Council